Premier League is thrilling always, very intense, and in recent years it has gone to the last game on a couple of occasions, memorably between Liverpool and Manchester City. Again, with 2 games for City to play and 1 for Arsenal, it's a 2-horse race. Manchester City play Spurs on Tuesday night, and then they have West Ham at home. And Arsenal have 1 game left, and that game is Everton at home next weekend. If City were to win their 2 games, they'd go to 91 points. And if Arsenal beat Everton, they will go to 89 points. So City have it in their own hands. But if they were to drop points by drawing with Spurs, say, tomorrow night, then goal difference comes into the equation. And at the moment, Arsenal are 3 better off on goal difference. It's complicated, but on the other hand, not for the man that we're going to talk to now, John Giles, who understands these things and realises games are won on the pitch, John.
Certainly, Eamon, yeah.
And we saw City against Fulham on Saturday, conscious of the goal difference issue, because it is as good as a point. They got 4, and they got a penalty near the end, and Gvardiol, who'd scored 2 goals from fullback, was going to take it, but they took the ball off him and they gave it to Alvarez, their Argentinian World Cup winner, who scored, and that gave them 4 goals in the bank, as it were. They were very ruthless and very impressive, I thought, John.
Oh, yeah. They won very, very well. I mean, now that the nervous time of the year for both
yes,
City and Arsenal, as we know. But to win it as impressively as they did was very good, because Fulham can be difficult, Eamon.
Yep.
You know, and I think he's absolutely right about the penalty taker. You know,
yes.
As I said, there's no sentiment in football, Eamon. If you have your regular penalty taker, then whatever the results or the result that is in the match,
yep,
the penalty taker takes the penalty. I mean, we saw that upset, didn't we, a couple of weeks ago with Chelsea, with a couple of the players.
Yeah, fighting over who should take the penalty.
Who should take it, yeah. When it was when they were winning 4-0.
Yeah.
Amen.
Yeah.
You know, I've seen it before in my career. Lads want to take the penalty when it's 4 or 5-0. Not when it's 1-0 or no score.
Yeah.
When there's a lot at stake. So no, they were very impressive with that match. Won well, because as we've said before, Fulham can be difficult.
Yeah.
But it was a big match for them, and they won impressively.
Yeah, and Arsenal, you've had a fancy for Arsenal now for a couple of months, having been, I think, like myself, a little bit questionable as to Arsenal when it came to the crunch, whether they'd have the resolve. I think they proved it to your satisfaction and to mine indeed, and I attribute a lot of that to Declan Rice, who's been really outstanding for them. But you still think City have to go and do it at Spurs tomorrow night, and if they slip up, if they drop 2 points, for example, then it's back in Arsenal's hands.
Yeah, well, it's a great finish, I mean, you know, but Spurs have 2 matches to play, Arsenal have 1 match to play, and there's still a lot to be done. I mean, Arsenal would be more favourites to win against Everton at home, I mean, than City going to Spurs, for example. You know.
Well, if they get a point at Spurs, then they both have 86 points. If they both win, City beating West Ham on Saturday or Sunday rather, Arsenal beating Everton, it would go to goal difference, and as that stands, Arsenal are 3 ahead.
Yeah.
So it's very much still game on, isn't it?
Oh, definitely. I can't remember a finish so exciting, if that's the right word, for the end of it. One of the teams have 1 match to play, and the others have 2 matches to play.
Yeah,
and it's still not over. And this can happen, that can happen, and it's a great finish for the Premiership. There's no doubt about that.
Now, John, Arsenal, they played Manchester United yesterday. They took an early lead, and they kind of, I wouldn't say hung on, but they weren't as imposing and as impressive as they have been at times. I think the fact that it was Manchester United still there is a Manchester United effect, isn't there, John? And they got the job done in the end without being particularly impressive. But United were dreadful, weren't they?
Oh yeah, United have been having a dreadful time. I mean, no more than last week at Crystal Palace. We'll go back to it. Anyway, we won't go back to that. We're not giving them much credit at any stage. We don't deserve it. But Arsenal, again, I was quite impressed with them yesterday. I mean, a very, very nervy game.
Yes.
Manchester United at home, still Manchester United.
Yes.
A big crowd there trying to get them going. And to do what Arsenal did was get the goal. United didn't really have any chances, did they?
No, and they were playing into the Stratford end in the second half. Now, we've seen that movie before, Manchester United getting outplayed at times, but when the last 15 minutes playing into the Stratford end, the spirit of that club and its history, it's a bit like Liverpool playing into the cup. It does make a difference.
Oh, of course it does. I mean, that's the history of the big clubs like that. That's what they've done. A lot of the big successes, maybe a goal, 2 goals behind, and they're playing into the Stratford end and all that. But that didn't happen.
No.
Because Arsenal, to be fair to them, defended very well. They didn't give anything away. Yeah, they got their goal. They got a little bit nervy, but they didn't give United any chances. You can't look back at the match, at that particular match, and say, well, if they'd scored here, if they scored there, just wasn't on.
No,
and you can't. I mean, Arsenal in that situation are bound to be a bit nervy, Eamon. But they held their nerve and they got their win, and that's all that matters really on the day.
Let me ask you about Declan Rice, who they paid 100 million for last summer. And my own opinion is that he should have been Footballer of the Year. I think he's made a massive difference to them. But my opinion doesn't count. In fact, I wouldn't begrudge it to Phil Foden, who seems likely to get it. He's got the Footballer of the Year, and he's a Manchester City player. However, Graham Souness and Roy Keane, at different stages in the season, have said that Rice can't be a great player because he doesn't score enough goals and he doesn't create enough goals, assists they call them. I disagree with that quite strongly. I have respect for Graham Souness. When he's doing his punditry, he's pretty honest. What do you think?
Everybody's has different opinions on it, unfortunately. I'm not trying to get out of it. I mean, I think
how good is Declan Rice then? Let me put it that simply.
He's very, very good, and I think he's been a terrific signing for Arsenal.
Yeah,
definitely. He's a huge influence on it. But I think players are inclined to look for things that they did themselves.
Yeah.
And if you try to compare Graham Souness with Rice, they're chalk and cheese in many ways, because in the middle of the field, particularly, you usually have 3 players in the middle of the field. And you very seldom have 3 players of the same caliber or the same type.
Yes.
Because they mix in. Now, I think Rice would have been a great partner of Graham Souness.
Yes.
Doing what they did.
Yeah.
Because they did different things. I hope I'm making sense here. In the middle of the field, there's mostly 3 players, Eamon.
Yep.
You get a right-sided midfield player, you get a left-sided midfield player, and you get a central midfield player. Graham Souness was a central midfield player who dictated the game in many ways.
Yep.
Rice doesn't do that. But what he does do, what Graham couldn't do, was cover the ground when the opposition had the ball.
Yes.
Get it back, very seldom give the ball away in what he does. So he's a different type of, I think he's a top class midfield player.
Yes.
He's not the general type midfield player. Right now, when I think when Graham is very good and he's a very good commentator and that, but Graham, when he's judging midfield players, judges them, I think, on what he did himself.
Yes. Yeah, well, I mean, everyone who makes assessments or analyses things has, as it were, a bias towards what they were themselves. It's quite natural.
Yes.
In the case of Roy Keane, it's just the fact that having a go at Haaland, for example, when his real beef is with Haaland's father in that terrible incident where they got involved with each other, and that was a kind of lifelong grudge that Keane has held. So he takes it out on the son. His beef with Rice is Rice was in the Irish team when Keane and Martin O'Neill were in charge of it, and Rice could have been selected. They didn't pick him, and they made a right boob there, didn't they? I mean,
they didn't pick. They had to pick him in a competitive match.
Yeah, but they had him for competitive games. He was there.
Oh no, but he had to play, and they didn't pick him for the competitive match. Playing a few friendly matches, you could have played him for 10, 15 minutes, and you got him.
Yep, I'm glad for Declan Rice that didn't do that actually, because you know the way Ireland are at the moment, John, you wouldn't want to play for them or manage them.
Get back to him as a player, Emily.
Yeah,
there's players on the pitch, 3 midfield players generally in a perfect situation.
Yeah,
for midfield players. And none of the 3 are the same. They do different things. Do you know what I mean?
I do, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. There has to be a balance.
There has to be a balance in it.
Yeah.
And if Graham Souness was playing, Rice would be a perfect partner, one of the perfect partners for him.
Yes. Yeah.
Doing what he did. Now, I think he could weigh in with a few more goals.
Right. Yeah.
You know, because usually it's the central midfield player who is making most of the goals, and the 2 players either side of him should be, in my opinion, scored more of the goals.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the criticism that Graham levelled at him. I think the way he plays, John, he's there for breaking up attacks, reading the game, intercepting.
Yeah, sorry, can I just come in to you there?
Yeah.
Graham, in my opinion, when he was talking about him, should have been talking about him in the way we're talking about him.
Yeah.
You know? Graham could bring himself in. Graham could say, I was a certain type of player that Rice isn't.
Yes.
But he's a certain type of player that I couldn't be.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it takes, different players. In left half side, usually the good side is the left-footed player on the left-hand side, Eamon. Usually.
Yes.
It doesn't have to be. And a right-footed player on the right side. And a midfield player, really, ideally, if he's both-footed.
Yeah.
To make the whole thing come together.
Yeah.
But Rice does what he does and has been a big asset to Arsenal this year.
Yeah. I actually think if Liverpool had bought him, he would have been a huge player for them this year, because he would have been a huge player for anybody, Eamon. Yes, that's true.
And Liverpool certainly don't have a midfield player of his calibre.
I mean, I would say, John, if Liverpool, who's my team, if they had paid 100 million for Rice last summer, as Arsenal did, I think Liverpool would have won the Premier League this year. I think he would have made a huge difference. They've signed 3 or 4 midfield players. Only McAllister, the Argentinian, who is a very good player, has worked. The rest of them are not much good.
No, I think the McAllister-Rice partnership, Eamon, would have been excellent.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think they would have been made for each other.
Yes. Yeah.
Because McAllister does most of his good work in the middle of the field, linking it up.
Yeah.
And I think Rice either side of him, preferably on the right-hand side, would have been the guy covering the ground, getting back, doing the things that McAllister wouldn't be doing.
Yeah.
I think that would have been a huge partnership for Liverpool, who didn't really have a good...
No, didn't have a good defensive midfield player at all. And they'd lost a couple, Milner and Jordan Henderson, who were kind of leaders in there, were important players for them. But let's move on, John. You still, with these, City have 2 matches to play. Spurs away, Tuesday night. West Ham at home, which I think we'd agree is probably a gimme. I don't want to be disrespectful to David Moyes, who I have a great deal of respect for. But the Spurs game could be a banana skin. And then Arsenal, of course, have Everton. And they wouldn't be a pushover with Sean Dyche, their coach. You know, he's hungry. He'll set his team up. They won't be easy, but they would be beatable. So they'd be
the most beatable of them, Eamon.
Yes.
You know, I mean, Dyche has done a good job, but if they're playing, they wouldn't be able to live with it, I don't think.
Right. And you think it's still possible? I think City will kill Spurs. I mean, we praised Spurs coach Postecoglou because of how they started and the way they passed the ball, the way they play football. But in the last few weeks, John, I must say I've gone off him. Things he said and the way the team has been set up, I don't know. But you have a better idea maybe about City's chances to. I think they'll kill them.
Well, it could well be. I mean, to be fair to City, in the few years where they've won the league, they've had to come with something at the end of the season.
Yep.
And gone through, did a business.
Yep.
I don't think it'll be easy. I think they were very impressive
at Fulham
last week.
Yeah.
When they played at Fulham.
Yeah.
That was very good. The previous match, it was against Forest. I didn't think they were good at all.
Right. Yeah.
So, but they have done it in the past. But I think the Spurs match would be a huge match for them. Eamon. I know what you're saying about the manager. The manager is what he is, Eamon.
Yeah.
Like he got Spurs to where they were a few weeks ago by doing what he does.
Yeah.
And he's done it very well. Now, he takes an awful lot of chances in what he does.
Yes.
We saw him, a few months ago, when they were beaten, they were down to 9 men.
You're playing Chelsea, and they had 2 players sent off, and they still played the high line.
Yes, and he said he would.
He said he was asked after the match if he'd do the same thing again, and he said, "Yes, mate, that's who we are."
That's what he believes, and he does do certain things which are really, really good. And he's up to the last few matches, he's had a really top class season for Spurs. They're very attractive to watch and very effective in what they do. The last couple of weeks, it's gone against them, and it's always likely. There's always a good chance, more than other teams, for it to go against them. But there's other days where they're absolutely brilliant. And this is where, if I was a real City man, I'd be wary, very, very wary of the Spurs match. Because he won't care about City. He'll do what he wants to do with his team.
Yeah.
And he won't be scared of them.
No. I mean, we mustn't forget, John, I mean, Spurs have something to play for. If Spurs do the business, win the 2 games, and Villa were to lose both of their games, then Spurs would qualify for Europe ahead of Villa.
I think that's a real dodgy one for City.
Right. Just one other thing. He was criticised for the number of goals Spurs concede from set pieces.
Yeah.
And he said, that's just us, mate. In other words, he was asked, do you actually have a set piece coach? He said, no, I do all of that. And, you know, if you have a glaring weakness, and set pieces are hugely important.
Of course, corner kicks and free kicks are very, very important in a match, because you're going to have corner kicks and free kicks against you, and you should be well organised for that in that situation. Now, in general, in principle, Eamon, I don't agree with the corner kicks and some clubs with a throw-in specialist.
Yeah.
Right. You can
say the guy in Forest, I think he throws it 100 yards.
I can understand. But certainly, if he's conceding as many goals as he is from free kicks or corner kicks, then I think it would be time to get advice or to get somebody in.
Yes. Yeah, I agree. And he's kind of resisting that. Now, he has an attractive... he's an Aussie, and they tend to speak their mind, which he does. And he has an attractive kind of way about him. He doesn't slag referees or jump up and down, and he just sits there. He just stands there and, you know, he behaves like a normal human being. But I don't think behaving like a normal... When I think of the successful coaches of the past, Alex Ferguson, for example, I don't think being a normal human being, or indeed Arsene Wenger, is part of the deal, is it? No. When you think of all the coaches that we've known, not many of the successful ones, and not many of them have been normal human beings.
No. That's what makes them great.
Exactly.
Because they know what they want to do. They demand it, they demand effort, they demand all the things that's really necessary for a successful team. Yeah. And one of them is corner kicks and free kicks. But in his general play, the Spurs man.
Yes.
Like, I see him like, God, he's taken some chances.
Yeah.
And he had, overall in the season, he's been very successful.
He has, and they have good players like Son.
Very attractive, very successful in what he's doing. It's only in the last few weeks that they really haven't played as well as they should. They should be playing. So I think he will get a grip of them, and I think he will do what he wants to do, and he might get a coach in for the set pieces.
Right, and that gives them a real chance then, in your book, against of upsetting City, and a draw even.
Definitely.
A draw is no good to City, really, with the goal difference situation.
No.
Okay, we're grateful to John.